I hope y'all are having a great day, and today I'll be reviewing The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson, the final book in the Mistborn trilogy. This is so exciting! I didn't take notes while reading this, which was the stupidest and most short-sighted thing ever, because this is a conclusion, so obviously lots of things went down, and I probably won't mention 90% of it, because I don't remember. Oh, regret, but such is life. Before I go into spoilers, I want to quickly give my overall opinion on the trilogy for those who still haven't read these books. First off, why? Why haven't you read them? Is it the size? The genre? The hideous US covers? Don't worry about it. Just read it. They're Sharpay Evans level fabulous. Read the book. That is my simple request. These books are fabulous. Bigger and better and best. But yeah, these books are so wonderful. Brandon Sanderson is such a skilled storyteller. He's an expert at world building and crafting awesome plots and creating well-developed, lovable characters. Please throw away all the doubts you have about reading this series and just pick it up. Now, if you haven't read The Hero of Ages, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave now because I'm gonna go into spoilers. I don't want you to be spoiled. I love you, but I'll love you 15 times more after you've read these books. So, goodbye. Okay, where to start with this book? First off, I spent over a month reading this. Oops. Not because I wasn't interested, not because this book was bad. It was one reason. That reason is school. When I have school, I can't read. I don't have time. It's so frustrating and I hate it. But I did it. I finally got through it. It was awesome. Yay! Holy moly schmoly, this book is just crazy. I'm gonna say that outside of the ending with Vin's kind of ascension into godhood and the deaths of Alan and Vin, that whole ending, outside of that, I think this book was the most predictable out of all of them. And I think that's credited to Brandon Sanderson's choice of chapter epigraphs. I think those epigraphs were just too informative to the point where they gave you enough information to piece things together before the events actually played out. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just that I was expecting to be super surprised at every turn, and I wasn't exactly. But in all honesty, even though I said that it was the most predictable, that still doesn't mean it's predictable. I'm saying it's the most predictable because I correctly guessed like 3 things, when in the previous books I correctly guessed negative things. First thing I guessed right away was the author of the epigraphs. Within the first few chapters I knew that they were written by a terraceman, and the only relevant terraceman of the book series is Sazed, so I guess that it was Sazed. Also, the epigraphs talked about Vin and Ellen like they were close friends, and Sazed is the only terraceman who was close to them. Now, I knew it was a terraceman because terracemen have a very distinct speech pattern, so that wasn't a surprise. I want to talk about Spook and his storyline. I immediately distrusted him. It was because of his hazardous dependence on his burning tin. He flared his tin 24/7, which Kelsier warned against like a bagillion times in the first book. Pretend bagillion is a number. That constant flare of tin just changed Spook, and it just really gave me sketchy vibes from him. I was scared that he was going to fall victim to the influence of Ruin, or that he was going to turn into an antagonist, or both. I was kind of irritated, to be honest, every time he compared himself to Kelsier, because stop. Don't ever compare yourself to Kelsier. Kelsier's up here. I just really love Kelsier, in case you couldn't tell. I feel like I should have sympathized with him more because he felt like an outsider to Kelsier's crew and all that, but I couldn't. Anyway, when Spook was in the burning building and Kelsier appeared to him and Spook magically got the power to burn pewter, I initially thought it was preservation appearing to him and granting him a power of allomancy, because allomancy was originally affected by preservation. But then there was a chapter epigraph that explained hemalurgy, and the epigraph described the process of hemalurgy and what it does, stuff like that, and that's when I knew that it was Ruin who was using the guise of Kelsier to get to Spook, and that Spook had the metal inside of him that was giving him the power. And it was approximately then that I finally put together Vin's earring and hemalurgic spike. I mentioned in my Well of Ascension review that I had this theory that Vin's earring meant something more, and so the explanation of the hemalurgy magic system allowed me to finally realize that the earring was what was giving her the power to pierce copper clouds, and Reen's voice voice in her head was actually Ruin, etc. It just all started making sense. Having your questions answered is always a great feeling. I feel like a lot of readers probably guessed that too. After all, Sanderson has been dropping hints since book 1, which is so impressive. But anyway, back to Spook's storyline. I like the way he finally realized what was going on and he pulled the piece of metal out of him during his storyline's climax. I like the way he risked himself to bring the water back to the canals. It was really heroic. I approved. And Kelsier obviously approved too because he asked Spook to be turned into a Mistborn at the end. I didn't care for his romantic relationship with Beldre, but you know what? You go, Spook. You get that girl. You deserve it. I didn't guess that the Colossus were human. I should have guessed because, you know, Brandon Sanderson has been dropping a few hints about that, but I didn't. It was such a surprise, and it makes them so much more monstrous knowing that you need like 5 lives to make a Colossus. So that was a surprise. I loved Tensoon. I love him so much. I love his storyline. I love his point of view. I didn't get to see as much of him as I would have liked. I wish he had gotten more screen time than he did, but he still played an important role. I hope we get to see more of him. Okay, but the one thing that I really want to talk about is the ending, of course. The entire ending. Everything that happened before the ending is kind of unimportant. Kind of impertinent to me, at least compared to the end. Throughout this entire trilogy, ATM has been such a big deal. It's been such a hot commodity, it's been the base of the economic system, it's been like the most powerful allomantic metal, things like that. It's been a huge freaking deal. And never, ever while reading this entire trilogy did I ever put importance to it. I didn't care about it. I'm so stupid. Not even theorizing about its importance was probably the single most idiotic thing I did while reading this entire trilogy. ATM plays a huge role in the first book as it's one of the main incentives of the entire heist. ATM plays a huge role in the second book as it's the reason why Luthadel is being sieged. So of course it would play a big role in the third book as well. I just didn't think about it. Stupidity. Never in a million years would I have guessed that ATM was Ruin's body, ? That's still a little bit weird to me. I guess ATM is to Ruin as that little metal nugget that Ellen ingested at the end of Well of Ascension is to Preservation. I'm sure the metal that made Ellen into a Mistborn has a name other than that little metal nugget that Ellen ingested at the end of Well of Ascension, but I don't know it. Moving on. We start the book with Marsh. We have a prologue that's in his point of view, and several times in the book, the narrator, usually in the chapter epigraphs, mentions that it takes an enormous amount of strength and mental capacity to even resist Ruin just a little bit. So I was expecting some grand redemption or retaliation regarding Marsh and Ruin. Now, Marsh pulled out Vin's earring, which allowed her to ascend. By the way, after I figured out that Vin's earring was her hemalurgic spike, I was so frustrated every time Vin mentioned that she was wearing her earring. I was like, stop! Take it out! Stop! What are you doing? But anyway, Marsh yanked out Vin's earring instead of killing her, which, along with other events, basically led to the rescue of the world. So yes, it was a fantastic and significant act on Marsh's part, but I don't know. I'm gonna be honest and say that I was a little underwhelmed. I was expecting something bigger. I could not believe my eyes when Ellen died. I couldn't believe it. I was like, no way, no frickin' way. This is not happening right now. He kind of died at the Well of Ascension and then he was brought back to life, so that's obviously what's gonna happen again this time, right? Right? He can't die, he's the Emperor. But he died, for real. Which was so crazy and unexpected for me, personally. I couldn't believe it. And then Vin died too, and I just, as if having it. I didn't cry, surprisingly. Even though I had 3 books with these incredible characters, I didn't cry at their deaths, even though I cried at Kelsier's death so hard, even though I'd only known him for 1 book. I think it's because Ellen and Vin's deaths weren't sad. Their deaths weren't for nothing. They practically were the saviors of the world, them along with Sazed, and so they died saving the world, and it wasn't sad. I think it would have been extremely sad if one of them had died and then the other had lived, but luckily they died like basically at the same time, and they're reunited in the afterworld that Sanderson has created for his universe, and that thought is very comforting. Also, let's talk about Sazed, who ended up being the hero of ages, which was one of my theories. Holla! The role of the hero of ages wasn't quite what I was expecting it to be. I wasn't expecting Sazed to have incorporated all his knowledge of of religions into his job, but I love the way that played out. It gave a lot of meaning to Sazed's collection of religions, and that was great. It was just really well put together, I thought. Also, the deepness ended up being Ruin's corruption of the mists, I guess, which honestly was a little bit anticlimactic, but I can deal with it. Ooh, speaking of Ruin, next to the dead bodies of Ellen and Vin was the dead body of Ruin. And it was a human. It was a boy with red hair. I hope that's explained in the spin-off series, because that was crazy. Who is that? Who is he? What's his backstory? What's his history? How did he become Ruin? What? I think it's interesting that the human counterpart of the evil god whose only purpose is to destroy everything is a ginger. What are you trying to say, Brandon? But the ending to the Hero of Ages was so happy. I loved it. The world has been restored to its proper position in all of its green and flowery glory. It was just so satisfying. I like the way Brandon Sanderson still hints at more things even with the ending of this book, leaving questions open, probably in preparation of his spin-off series. Like he talks about there being 16 medals, 2 of which we don't know yet. Also, Sazed hints at perhaps being able to restore dead people back to life if only he practices? What? I guess Sazed is God now, which is interesting to think about. It's a little bit weird, but I mean, if God were to be anybody, I'm glad it's Sazed. I'm still curious as to how the world is going to continue on after this book. What kind of government system is there going to be? Books usually end with the bad guy being taken down, like in the final Empire. And what was so interesting about the Well of Ascension is that it showed what happened after that. It showed the struggles of Reconstruction and how even after a happy ending, it's not so happy. And I feel like the end of this book was a variation of the ending of the Final Empire. And I still want to know how smoothly things are going to function after this huge transformation of the planet. How are people adapting to this completely changed world? Who's going to rule? How have the magic systems changed after the consolidation of Preservation and Ruin, if they've changed at all? There's so many questions that I still have. I hope they're explored in the spin-off series. I really need to get my hands on the Alloy of Law recap / plot-wise of the Hero of Ages. I think that's all I have to say right now because, again, I didn't take notes because I'm stupid. I probably forgot so many things that I would have wanted to mention, but I guess I'll end this video with concluding thoughts of the trilogy as a whole. The Mistborn trilogy has been one of the most incredible and enjoyable reading experiences of my life. I love these books, every single one of them. They're all equally incredible. I can't choose a favorite. Kelsier and Vin are my favorite characters of the entire trilogy. I think solely in regards to plot, The Well of Ascension is my favorite because that twist at the end, crazy, so crazy. My mind was blown. Oh god. Sazed, was that you? But yeah, I don't know what to say. These books are just so great. I can't thank BookTube enough for introducing me to this series, for pressuring me to read these books because they're so good. So that's it for me. This trilogy has been one of the craziest roller coaster rides I have ever been on. And I'm sad that it's over and that I finished the books. But there are still more books, albeit with different characters, that I can still fall in love with. There's always going to be more Sanderson to read. They're so good. Okay, please leave your thoughts on the Hero of Ages and the trilogy in its entirety. Do you agree with my thoughts? Do you disagree? Who's your favorite character? Which one's your favorite book, if you can choose? It's an impossible question. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day and happy reading. Goodbye!